Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Future of BizTech. I'm your host, JC Granger, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Matt Florell, who is the founder and CEO of ViciDial. Matt, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what does ViciDial do?
ViciDial is a contact center system. It's actually open source. It is free. Yes, we give our product away for free. There are no per seat licenses or anything like that. Enough of that ad. But so we started 22 years ago. I wrote this software basically to kind of fill a niche in a company I was working for that needed to basically dial a list of numbers of people that had expressed interest in their product. I went out and contacted several contact center companies. The prices were astronomical, $1,000 a seat, $10,000 a seat, pretty crazy numbers, long-term contracts, all that. And around that time, I had been in my consulting side playing around with some open source telephone stuff. Bayonne was the first project I looked at. And then I found Asterisk, and Asterisk was a wonderful, robust platform. It was still in its infancy, it hadn't even released its 1.0 version at that point in time. But it was really easy to use. I had built a basic IVR project with Bayonne, and it took me 2 weeks to get this thing working. And when I found Asterisk a couple months later, I was able to replicate the same thing in 2 hours. So that really gives you an idea of the expansiveness and the flexibility and the ease of programming to that platform. So I built a system basically to do click to dial, list dialing for agents. And the rest is history. 22 years later, we've got thousands of clients around the world, and we're doing well.
That's awesome. I mean, I've been in tech for a long time, and I advise, like software companies and whatnot as well. And I've always loved anything you can give away for free to start, right? Because really the biggest thing, it's like everyone's trying to sell something, and that's fine. You can believe in your own product, but how does the other person know, right? And so that risk takeaway is fantastic. So how have you guys been generally monetizing off it? You're obviously giving away something for free. So where does the income come from overall?
Well, the first several years it was through consulting, adding features, doing setups, selling hardware. That was the vast majority of our revenues, and we grew rather rapidly in those first several years. And then we got into hosted. When the era of T1s and PRIs went away, and everybody was using SIP for phone calls. That's when we were able to transition to more of a reliable monthly income type of income stream, and that's our primary revenue source right now.
That's awesome. But how are you pitching this? And like, how about this? Who are the types of companies? Is it just dial centers, or do you find that this is really good for even companies that just want to do this as part of their own, let's say, outbound marketing or customer service? Where do you find your biggest client base for something like this?
It's anything and everything. We have non-for-profits as clients. We have schools as clients, survey companies. One of the largest insurance companies in the world is one of our clients. Basically, anybody who has a need to connect with clients using a telephone and some kind of contact center operation. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a contact center. We have a client that does infomercial schedulings. So they have 100,000 DIDs, 100,000 phone numbers. And every time an infomercial shows on, Billings, Montana at 3 a.m., they use a different phone number. So the routing engine is built into ViciDial, and it's simple to use and simple to log and manage. And we have a client that does nothing but that. They have no agents. They just route phone calls for these, late night infomercials mostly.
Nice. Okay. So then how are you getting the word out there? I mean, listen, you guys have been around 22 years. I imagine you have a lot of word of mouth,
Yeah.
right? Referrals. I mean, if you've been around that long, you're probably doing great on that. But when you're trying to scale any business or if you're trying to always grow, right, even at a steady pace, there has to be some sort of aspect of your outbound marketing or PR. I mean, hey, you're on the podcast, so that's one thing. That's good. What else are you guys doing to get the word out about Vici to companies who just don't know you exist yet?
Well, most of it is word of mouth and experience. We have over the last decade, there have been over 150,000 new installs of our software, and that's unique IP addresses. We don't require registration to use the software, but we have a database of um, area codes, country codes, time zones, zip codes. And whenever you do a new install and you install a new database, it will download the latest files from our system. And all we log is the IP address so we
Mhm.
can see where people are coming from. So 150,000 installs, that's a lot. And most of our clients have come from people who either have used ViciDial, were searching for something that was free. We've had a lot of IT directors that in a pinch, they installed our software in an hour. Their legacy system crashed for whatever reason, and they got us up and running in less than a day so that they would have something to operate. So we also get a lot of clients from companies that don't know they're using ViciDial. And then once they figure out they're using something that's free, they transition off of it. Or, they're a very large company and the company they're using that's using our software doesn't know how to manage it properly at scale. And that's something we're very good at is managing ViciDial at scale.
So actually, that brings up a really good point. How do you handle the very delicate situation that you have a client that's been using your system and your process and software, and they have a client that now realizes that you guys are the source and that it's free and they want to go direct to you? Obviously, there's circumvention issues there that can make a bigger company a little nervous. How do you navigate that? Like, I mean, that's a narrow
Yeah.
path, right? How do you navigate when that happens? And I imagine you're not going outbound to them as much as when it comes to you, you go, ah, crap, now what do we do?
Yeah, we don't have any aggressive sales policies at all. We don't really do much in the way of outreach or calling potential clients. So if somebody comes to us, then we will take them on as a client. Usually, we have had very few instances of what you mentioned of people that have left other platforms and come to us. It does happen, where the company that's losing them will come to us. We have very few instances of that. We have a lot of instances of people leaving other platforms that are using us and coming to us, but we almost never hear from that original platform.
Sure.
Usually, there's no feedback at all, even if they're a client of ours. Some of them are clients of ours. They pay us for support. Some of
Mhm.
them rather frequently, and we haven't had any conflicts like that, luckily.
Okay, that's good, right? Because I mean, you can imagine like sometimes it's like, you get stuck in that kind
Yeah.
of that bad situation, but you guys apparently have navigated it well, which is great. Where do you see your company? And if we have this talk again in a year, where do you want Vici Dial to be, whether it be financial growth or feature releases or business model change? What's kind of your 12-month goal at this point?
Well, we've been working more with LLMs. People like to call it AI. It's not really AI. It's large
Kind of an
language
abused
models.
term, isn't it? It's a very abused
Yeah.
term.
We've been using it for things that it's actually pretty good at, which is like transcription services. They don't have to be 100% accurate, but they fill a need. We have a client that has contact centers in multiple countries, and one of the projects we're working on now is translating from a specific European language recordings into English, and then re uh, vocalizing them in English. So the original customer and agent are speaking, a specific Western European language, and then the next day, the QA team here in the U.S. is listening to those phone calls in English, and we've done testing on this. It's all LLM based. It's a pretty unique application of it, but it fit a very specific client need. Their corporate headquarters were here. They didn't have a very robust corporate presence in the European area, so they wanted to be able to keep their QA team together doing this, and we were able to facilitate that. And it's pretty amazing what these LLMs are able to do, and what they're not able to do. There are things that they are not good at, and there are things that they're pretty good at. And just doing speech recognition and things like that, with the error margin at 5%, 10%, that's usually okay for a large set of data like transcribing phone calls.
Nice. Okay. And then where do you see the industry going and the technology going in the next couple years? No, I used to say next 5 years, but with the way technology is
Yeah.
exponential now, that's not even possible to comprehend. So let's just say 2 years out, where do you see the either the technology or even other things like legislation affecting, the technology of cold calling or even call centers in general? Like just crystal ball, 2 years from now, what's the most interesting thing you see coming?
The most interesting thing, we'll see if this U.S. administration seems to be a lot friendlier to deregulation of pretty much everything. So if you would see some of the FCC and FTC rules kind of just fall by the wayside, you could see AI agents doing outbound.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Things like that would be pretty ground shaking. It's not really legally possible to do that in most cases now. And we've had a lot of clients ask about it. We've done a lot of setups of, so-called AI agent systems, dozens. Almost none of them are actively using them right now. So many failures, so much time spent trying to get this technology in its infancy to fit into square peg round hole kind of thing. They're trying. People are trying to get it and selling it as it's able to do things it's just not able to do at this point. Well, so that's one of the things we've had to deal with, and I have a feeling that will get better. And maybe if some of the roadblocks are removed, not necessarily that that's a good thing, but history isn't based on good and bad things. It's based on things that happen and the response to them. So that could open up a lot of opportunities and abuse in the
Yeah,
near
no,
future.
yeah, I agree. Well, on that note, then, I mean, given what's coming and what you kind of see happening, what's the best advice you can give to, I mean, geez, anyone who's even in the industry or even clients in that sense who are using this at a very large scale, right? Like, what's the best piece of advice you can give just with what you're seeing coming?
Well, we've always had clients pushing to do AI agents. I remember 23 years ago, before I even wrote ViciDial, we had a client that was pushing us to do these inbound IVR, automated response systems, and they were horrible. But we facilitated it. We set up a system to interact with it, and it was horrible. It didn't work well, but we're constantly being asked by clients to push the envelope, try this, try that. Sometimes we present clients with options, or partner companies that are testing out new technology. All this discussion of LLMs, we were working with a company local here in Florida, in St. Petersburg, actually, that was doing call analysis and then analyzing leads based upon call analysis. And this was a decade ago.
Mhm.
And the technology worked. It worked pretty well to analyze phone calls and to target who you should call back for an additional call. We did more than one test setup with clients. We did a case study that we had on our website, and they couldn't get to market. They couldn't get the market to really embrace their technology, and they ended up getting absorbed by another larger company. And now that technology is the basis of an AI system that they're selling. So I think they were just too early to market. That's another thing. You can be too early to market, and fail. And we've seen a lot of companies do that, but you got to keep pushing the envelope and testing what's out there because little technologies like WebRTC, how a lot of these conference calls happen, how almost all of our clients are now using WebRTC. That was once very buggy technology, and now it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I remember RTC that was like OG level, like way
Yeah.
back. Yeah, like way like original. And then now they've kind of leapfrogged and caught up with the times, it sounds like, and yeah, and advanced themselves. That's good for them. But back to this to the AI side of it, it's interesting because you're right though. You can be early to market, right? And but what's interesting now is I wonder in this industry if that's even possible anymore. Because because things are moving so fast that it's like how do you even define early? Like early, if like their issue was that it was too early before things caught up. Now things are going so exponentially that almost any time you enter in like real linear time terms, it's likely that the technology will be able to catch up to you for you quick enough for you to survive, right? Like I was there was a guy that I was talking to who he was a little early at the time on the AI outbound cold calling agents, right? And if he had just been like, I mean, barely just a little later, it just went like this, like to the
Yeah.
point where now, I mean, I'm listening to recordings from 6 months ago of AI outbound agents versus today, and it is night and day. and
Yeah.
it's functionally ridiculous in a way because you think if that path keeps going, there will be a point where it will quite literally be impossible for any human being of average intelligence and above to tell the difference. Like I think the only thing that's stopping us from going fast is just our physical ability for the compute power, right? The chips, the cloud, hardware, things like that, right? Like
And the electricity.
and electricity, yeah, like the energy side of this. What's interesting? Kind of to go a little off track, I think that the green energy movement is only going to be driven and successful because of the AI need, right? There's a certain point where we're like, listen, yeah, fossil fuels they work, it's in our infrastructure, that's great, but that's not going to keep up. It just won't. I think where we
Right.
end up getting the big solar innovations, wind, ocean, whatever you want to bring into it, the battery capacity. There's new technology that Japan just came out with, the Japanese company, where they can harness power from the sun and then beam it down to Earth to a platform that receives it and then sends out the electricity. I'm like, I think, but the only reason they're working on this is because there's such this insane demand because we don't want to slow down the progress. I mean, some people do, but I mean, generally speaking, the AI sectors, want to go cowboy hard in the paint, as fast as
Yeah.
they can. But that's only going to happen if you have immense alternative energy capabilities. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that from your perspective?
Well, I watched a segment of a talk mentioning that we're going to need to triple our grid capacity, which is insane because
That's absurd.
and then I read an article about the true prices and cost of AI, and that at some point in time, an AI agent might actually cost as much as, if not more than, a human agent because of the resources involved and using there are different levels of algorithms and different levels of AI agents. And if you want the top one, you might be spending $50 an hour,
Yeah.
which is not cheap.
No. No,
So then you have machines competing against humans, and the power grid having to grow to be able to accommodate it. You have where is it in Memphis? The Grok, the
yeah.
XAI, uh,
Hmm.
has three gas turbines burning day and night to supply enough power because they can't get it from the grid. Uh, you know, that's not cheap.
No. Yeah, no,
And
I think that alone is going to drive the innovation of all the new technology that we
yeah,
get for
it's
everything.
going to have to. I mean, you're not right now. The people using OpenAI and using Grok and using all the other AI, the general ones, are not paying the cost that it takes to deliver it.
Yeah.
So that'll be, yeah, it'll be really interesting to
Yeah.
see how that turns out.
I mean, the famous saying is that, necessity breeds innovation, right?
Yeah.
Well, there is an absolute necessity here for increasing our power capabilities because the fact is, I mean, I don't think any politician can afford rolling blackouts to support AI, right? Like at that
Right.
point, like AI is going to be the thing that I think hurts our electrical grid the most, and it's also going to be the thing that helps us create the solution that will last us essentially forever in that sense, right? Renewable energy is always going to be that's hence renewable, right? Like, I mean, in this, we got the wind stuff, we've got ocean turbines, but in reality, the sun, I think, is going to be, solar is where it's going to be at. I don't think the current version of how it's set up is the solution. I think that the biggest innovations are going to come out of solar technology. Like I said, like this satellite, that has just
Yeah.
giant receiver and that bends it down. And eventually, you'll have power stations up in the in space that can then maybe charge giant batteries or beam that down back down to Earth, right? Like I think that's the only way that we do this is harnessing what is arguably, I mean, what was it like 10 trillion atomic bombs a day kind of thing
Yeah.
of power per day that comes out of the sun? Like, how are we not putting all of our energy and resources, so to speak, into that? I mean, and that's
I
what's
I
with
hope.
AI. Yeah.
I hope, but then, I read an article about Microsoft contracting to bring a mothballed nuclear plant back online for them.
Well, interestingly about that though, like I think nuclear does get a bad rap. Don't get me wrong, it's like skydiving. Statistically incredibly safe, except for when it goes wrong, right? Because then it goes really bad. But there's even in that, there's new fusion technology that's being introduced that would actually make what people semantically refer to as quote nuclear, not the consequential nuclear like meltdown scenario either, right? So I think here's what I think nuclear needs. I think it needs a rebrand. I think that someone's going to come in with a legitimately different technology that is still technically nuclear, but is done in a way that even if it goes wrong, it doesn't, melt down and Chernobyl a whole area, right? And then that needs a new name. They're going to have to come up with something else, rebrand it, and that is the only way any politician can sell it to the public. And I think these tech companies are going to be the first ones to be promoting it. I mean, Meta the use that what they need for that, I think they're gonna be one of the first. I think you're gonna see private companies building their own rebranded nuclear reactors to power their own AI and then lease that power out to America, which I mean, I don't know if that's great, but it could be a bridge solution anyway for what our government can do. But how all that wraps around to your industry, right? Is you guys are delivering, which what I love that you have open source, which I love open source as a concept, no matter what it is, by the way. And I love that you guys are offering that and as a baseline. And then that helps companies, again, with these AI agents coming out, being able to automate and make their costs lower and get the information out quicker and faster for users, for customers, things like that. There are benefits to that, obviously, right? And then that compute power being able to back it up. So is it this whole ecosystem, right? Like we're sitting here talking about nuclear technology, but it still somehow comes back to
Yeah.
ViciDial, right? Like that any way
Well, and
that
a lot of those AI, the LLMs are based on open source,
yeah,
open AI. That was,
yeah,
you can go and download those LLMs. That's how some of these companies are able to go from 0 to 60 in a month, is
yeah,
that they're using what everybody else has used. And that's really the success story of open source in general, Linux and
yeah.
the AI LLMs and ViciDial.
Yeah, ViciDial. There you go. We're going to add you to the top of the list now. Matt, thank you so much for being on the show here. Where can people find you specifically if they want to reach out about any kind of high level projects? And then where can they find the company if they just want to kind of kick the tires?
Well, ViciDial.com is pretty much the best place to reach me. I don't go on social media much anymore. It's kind of become a
Good for you.
mess.
Good for you. I'm
Uh,
jealous.
we have our little closed walled garden of some old forums that I'll speak on every once in a while. And but yeah, ViciDial.com, ViciDial.com.
Awesome. And listen, for everyone else out there listening, thank you again for listening to another episode of the future of biz tech. Hey, if you liked anything you heard today from either Matt or myself, give us a 5-star rating and forward this on to other people you know, because this is how tech nerds like you and I find cool podcasts like this one. Matt, thanks again for being on the show, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.